I was asked to talk about urban, and I can only do that by going back in my life, because the last 10 years of my life has been out in Cardross and living quite a rural existence, but I've kind of brought the city out to there. So I want to go back 33 years. This is me when I was probably the age of most of you in this room, in an industrial band test department. You can see we're playing on bits of old metal that we found in scrapyards down in the waste grounds of South London. This is Thatcherite post-industrial Britain, the start of it in the 1980s. This is Beckton, where Kubrick filmed Full Metal Jacket. This was our playground. Take the wasted spaces. Don't work with the state when you're young. Work against the state. Take the detritus. Find the places which are abandoned and make something interesting happen with them. I took that thinking then into rural locations. This was the Devil's Pulpit. I worked the Secret Sign. This technology buried in the water that shot a vertical waterfall 80 meters into the air. So we were using technology that we'd worked in the city and seeing how it changes the way that you see and feel about nature. 15 years later, I've got 100 ultra runners in the Ruhr in Germany, taking industrial locations and using the physical presence of runners, the human body, to articulate space. Slow motion photography there, giving you a sense of how the body moves through the physical space. Spaces are all about us. They're about what we do with them. This is Duisburg Nord, the greatest industrial park in the world, where instead of flattening things as they did in post-Thatcherite Britain, look at Motherwell, and building crap enterprise zones, they actually kept the things that survived from the Second World War and turned them into amazing parks for people. That brought me full circle 10 years later to St. Peter's Seminary. Here it sits. It is a truly urban form, but sitting in a rural landscape. So already you can imagine it's a place that is full of tension, it's full of conflict. A building like that should not be in a place like Cardross, and that's what makes it fascinating. This is it in 66. It housed 100 priests, but it never did. There were only 28 when it closed, because the program was dead. Religion was already dying in the west of Scotland, but the building survived. But it didn't survive intact. It didn't survive as it was built. Here you can see the teaching block. Frank Lloyd Wright made large in the west of Scotland. This building floats out on massive stanchions across a river that flows underneath it. And it was very, very beautiful for its first few years, but within 13 years, the program was dead. And for 30 years, it has been a ruin. It was a ruin for way longer than it was a working seminary. And it became a place where nature gradually encroached back in. And it's been an amazing playground, going back to that place that I played as a band member in the 80s. And when the church abandoned it, it also became a playground for artists, and particularly graffiti artists. There's a couple of slides I'll show you of, it's probably Smug and Estham, and you'll see Smug and Estham's work throughout Glasgow because they got lots of commissions for the Commonwealth Games. If you go into the upper parts of St. Peter's, there's graffiti now against Smug and Estham, saying fuck Smug and Estham, because they're seen as corporate graffiti artists. But actually it was a place where many, many people played for many years. And it's that point of taking the abandoned places, taking places which do not have value within a capitalist system, and doing interesting things with them. So after 7 or 8 years, and beginning to do the first serious surveys, we found that every single inch of this was covered in asbestos. And every graffiti artist and every urban explorer who'd been there for the last 20 years were probably covered in asbestos. So we thought we have to do something with this. You couldn't just leave it. It's not a playground anymore. It's not fun anymore. It's actually a place that is really hurtful and can really hurt people. So if we're going to have a program for this place, we have to do something serious with it. This is looking at the altar, going back to a beautiful curved wall behind it. And this is what we're going to do with it. The only area of restoration is to bring back the chapel, but it's going to sit within the bones of the old ruin. And that feels appropriate because the chapel still carries a sacral quality. The architects were no brutalists. They were playing with remarkable forms. And as we cleaned it up and we took out 300 tons of dirt and asbestos, we began to reveal the beauty of this building and the way all of the features within it float. It has weight, it has light, and it has this sense of space that opens up for you. And it will be a remarkable place to make work. And I hope that many of you will come and visit and add to the program. The idea is that the work that takes place there should be useful. I'm not interested in art that places objects within dull white spaces that talk about the history of art. Much more interesting to think of an art, a public art, that actually can help with the evolution of the building itself. So it's a different framing of the idea of art and what you can do creatively within spaces like this. This is looking into the crypt beneath, and this is some of the graffiti that we'll be keeping. Last year we did Hinterland, which was the first step to animate this space. We'll use it for art and we'll use it for education, because I think that many of the places that we all learnt, both in schools and universities, were really, really dull as spaces. Blocked in, small windows, learning factories. So what about spaces that allow you to expand your mind? And that's what we want to do here. And also it to be a place of public debate. So we've framed it on the idea of the agora, going back to ancient Greece, and the idea that it's really important to talk, and to talk seriously, and to talk across divides. And there I must stop.